So, as you all know, SAG-AFTRA, they've been on strike for a couple of months. And about a week or two ago, they were back at the table with the AMPTP to negotiate things. But then, all of a sudden, when everything looked good, the AMPTP just walked. And they said that SAG-AFTRA was being unreasonable, and they took their ball and went home, basically. And so there have been some recent developments in that whole thing, and I don't think they are good developments, both for the decision of the people doing them, or for the reporting going on it. So with that preamble out of the way, why don't I go ahead and talk about what it is we're getting into here. George Clooney, Scarlett Johansson, Tyler Perry, and other restless A-list actors pressure SAG-AFTRA to get a deal. Now, before I read this article, I want to remind you all that Variety, as well as Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter, are all owned by the same parent company, Penske Media, which also owns Dick Clark Productions, which is a member of the AMPTP. So these industry rags have a financial incentive to see the AMPTP come out on top. Anytime you are seeing editorializing like this, be very, very wary about their framing of it. Because as we'll see, we've got quite a few articles here to go through. This is just the first one. A group of A-list actors is adding pressure on SAG-AFTRA leadership to find a way to resolve the actor strike, which has now lasted 97 days. George Clooney, Tyler Perry, Scarlett Johansson, and others held a Zoom meeting on Tuesday afternoon with Fran Drescher, the president of SAG-AFTRA, and Duncan Crabtree Ireland, the union's executive director. Though the tone has been described as supportive, the actors did not call the meeting merely to express support. According to several sources, the A-listers represent significant discontent within the guilds that talks have broken down and are looking for a path to restart negotiations and end the strike. Perry employs hundreds of people at his studio in Atlanta and has been concerned for weeks that he cannot resume production. Now, I think this is a very important paragraph right here. I mean, a single sentence, but sure, yeah, it's a paragraph that points to something like these are A-listers, right? These are the 1% of Hollywood. And certainly, at least, I know George Clooney early on in the strike was raising money for strike funds, and he's been very openly supportive. But I don't know if any of these people have actually been seen on the picket line. And this right here, this highlights something very important. Perry employs hundreds of people at his studio in Atlanta, which means Perry is not just an actor, he's a producer. And if he's been concerned for weeks that he cannot resume production, well, that's because his interest is not solely in having solidarity with everyone else in SAG-AFTRA. He's a one-percenter. He owns a production studio. People like this aren't exactly who unions are for. The group, which also includes Emma Stone and Ben Affleck, was said by one source to have given a presentation to Drescher and Crabtree Ireland. The leaders listened and were expected to meet with the SAG-AFTRA negotiating committee on Wednesday afternoon before delivering a response. Representatives for the actors either did not respond to requests for comment or declined to comment on the substance of the meeting. SAG-AFTRA also did not address what was said in the meeting. "We meet with members of all profiles every day and we won't be commenting on those private conversations," the union said in a statement. So, let's remember what the headline said. Scarlett Clooney, Scarlett Johansson. Did I say Scarlett Clooney? Scarlett Clooney, George Johansson, Tyler Perry, and other restless A-list actors pressure SAG-AFTRA to get a deal. But that's not what the union said happened, and the actors aren't saying that happened. So where are they getting that from? The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers suspended talks on October 11th after declaring that the two sides are too far apart and that continued negotiations at that point would not be productive. The key obstacle in negotiations is SAG-AFTRA's demand for a new form of streaming residual, which would come on top of the residuals that actors already earn on streaming shows. SAG-AFTRA wants $500 million a year, which would come in the form of a per-subscriber fee assessed on each of the streaming platforms. That money would be distributed to actors by a jointly administered trust, presumably based on viewership data for each streaming show. Drescher has made it clear throughout negotiations that the issue is her top priority, but the studio CEOs have rejected it as economically untenable. The A-list group was said to be interested in coming up with a way to resolve that issue that would be acceptable to all sides. Now, we will get into what that plan was. This was the first article, so I figured we could kind of get in a timeline on this because this story has been developing over the last couple of days. Clooney in particular is no stranger to Screen Actors Guild politics. In December 2008, he was among a large group of A-listers who urged SAG members to vote against the strike authorization, citing the weak economy as a factor making it an inopportune time to shut down the industry. The union, which had yet to merge with AFTRA, ultimately withdrew the strike authorization vote. Again, George Clooney can afford to strike for years. So his interest here. The actors' union has been far more united this cycle, though there have been occasional signs of internal tensions, which Variety is ever so happy to highlight. Drescher has vowed from the beginning of negotiations to reach a seminal deal for actors. In late June, she and Crabtree Ireland recorded a video in which she expressed optimism about the talks and said they were extremely productive. That prompted an open letter from yet another group of A-listers, including Meryl Streep and Jennifer Lawrence, urging leadership to take a hard line in negotiations and saying that members may be ready to make sacrifices that leadership is not. After extending the talks, SAG-AFTRA went on strike on July 14th. The strike has now surpassed the length of the 1980 strike, which lasted 95 days. Okay, so that's the first story, where Variety says they pressure SAG-AFTRA to get a deal. But where in this article did you actually see anything that could cite that they were doing a pressure campaign? What they did was they had a talk with them where they presented a deal, a proposal to them. So beware of that editorializing. And my next couple of articles, I've got 2 from Deadline and 1 more from Variety. And I want you to notice the difference in tone between the way Variety is doing it and the way Deadline is doing it. Deadline. Hollywood's biggest stars offer to kick in $150 million over 3 years in dues to help end actors' strike stalemate. So this is the first article that I saw with actual details on what it was that George Clooney and the others proposed to SAG-AFTRA. After meeting on a Tuesday Zoom call to figure out how to end an actor strike that will soon stretch beyond 100 days, a group of Hollywood's biggest stars laid out to SAG-AFTRA leaders a groundbreaking proposal that amounts to the town's biggest earners defraying the costs to AMPTP signatories by eliminating the cap on membership dues to be used to bolster health benefits in other areas that SAG-AFTRA is trying to shore up. The offer would remove the $1 million cap on membership dues. In an effort to bring a residual system to streaming, the stars also have proposed a formula that would make the lowest names on the call sheet who most need the money the first to be paid. Deadline hears that SAG-AFTRA leaders brought the offer to its negotiating committee last night. Okay, so here is the deal. This is what they were proposing. A deal in which the AMPTP doesn't actually give them something. It's a deal in which the 1% of SAG-AFTRA pays more in dues. Now, the offer would remove the $1 million cap on membership dues. That cap, as far as I'm aware, I would need to look into it more. Is that something that they voluntarily can pay more into? Because if that's the case, then this is just their solution is just to turn SAG-AFTRA dues into more of a communal GoFundMe pot. And if they are making this money from doing acting, then they're being paid for their job. And the people who should be paying into this, the people who should be making the deal to get the actors what they need, is not the other actors. It should be the AMPTP. They're the ones who hold the real money, okay? George Clooney is rich. The guy who signs George Clooney's paychecks is wealthy. And George Clooney is also probably pretty wealthy himself. I haven't looked up his net worth, but I am sure it is in probably the 9 digits. But he's not a billionaire. Deadline spoke with Clooney, who confirmed the plan proposed by the stars. A lot of the top earners wants to be part of the solution, the 2-time Oscar winner told Deadline. We've offered to remove the cap on dues, which would bring over $50 million to the union annually. Well over $150 million over the next 3 years. We think it's fair for us to pay more into the union. We are also suggesting a bottom-up residual structure, meaning the top of the call sheet would be the last to collect residuals, not the first. These negotiations will be ongoing, but we wanted to show that we're all in this together and find ways to help close the gap on actors getting paid. So, that right there sounds like, hey, we've got an idea, this might help the negotiations, this might be something that we can give them. Versus the way that this was framed by Variety as they pressure SAG-AFTRA to get a deal. As for the other idea, the bottom-up residual structure, that sounds good on its face. I only saw this part of it today, so I don't know really how well that would work. You would need to, better experts than me would need to weigh in on that one. There will be much more to discuss on this as SAG-AFTRA and AMPTP negotiators blame one another after the studios walked away from the bargaining table, but many see this as virtue signaling that it's not helping matters when the business is shut down and below-the-line workers struggle to hang on after weathering the WGA strike, and now this one. It seems admirable that this group is willing to kick in this amount of money to move the negotiations to a close. Stay tuned. Well, that's some editorializing in this article. That's interesting. But George Clooney-led $150 million proposal to SAG-AFTRA didn't go well, maybe DOA. And I don't need to read everything because a lot of this is restating information, but sources with knowledge of the situation say the group of some 15 stars held a follow-up call last night with SAG-AFTRA's negotiating committee. It didn't go well, says one of the sources, adding that the committee didn't see the validity of the group's proposal. And this discusses the proposal. Their pitch found no traction, says the sources, leaving the A-listers group feeling dejected. They don't understand why there isn't just a mediation, says one of the sources. There's no mediation because the AMPTP walked away because the AMPTP is just trying to let this strike go on as long as possible so that they don't have to actually pay them anything. They want to bring the actors to heel, which isn't going to work because they eventually caved with the WGA, but they do want to make it painful in the meantime. SAG-AFTRA is expected to issue a statement today with regards to the stalemate with the A-listers, which we will be getting into on our next headline. As Variety previously reported, several sources say the group, which also include Emma Stone and Ben Affleck, are feeling discontented within the guild ever since talks broke down with the studios. They are looking for a path to jumpstart negotiations amid the economically devastating strike. Again, they don't actually cite any of these actors. None of these actors have talked to Variety about it. So anytime you see speculation on how they are feeling, keep in mind the source. And the source is, dude, trust me. Members of the negotiating committee say the part of the proposal pertaining to member dues is not directly relevant to the issues that have stymied negotiations with the studios. I'll reach out to George to talk to him, says David Jolife, a member of the negotiating committee. We appreciate everybody's help. Everybody has ideas, but we've been doing this for almost a year now. Duncan Crabtree Island, the union's chief negotiator, stopped by the Disney picket lines Thursday morning to show support for strike captains. In an interview there, he said that leadership is willing to hear and consider ideas from members. No one has indicated any lack of unity or support that I'm aware of, Crabtree Ireland said, and I don't think having a suggestion or an idea is an indication of a lack of support. I think it's unfortunate if people misconstrue that as some sort of interference or some sort of lack of confidence in the negotiating committee, because that's just not the case. Crabtree Ireland also said that the union regularly engages with members, and the only reason anyone pays attention is that the union includes many of the most famous people in the world. If we were a union that didn't have so much press attention on us, we would have these kinds of internal conversations all the time and no one would even know about it, he said. He also acknowledged there is frustration about the ongoing strike. I think everyone would like this to be over, he says. There's no one who wants this to continue, but I also think everyone recognizes that that's only going to happen with a fair deal. Jolife and a group of other negotiating committee members came to Amazon on Thursday to thank strike captains for their work. The leaders are also encouraging SAG-AFTRA members to show their support for the strike by picketing. Jody Long, president of the Los Angeles local, notes that the studio security guards are keeping count of how many people come out to picket every day. You have to also realize our members are working other jobs, especially now that it's gone on so long, she says. Francis Fisher, another negotiating committee member, echoed that message. There are people who are working 2 and 3 jobs, Fisher says. There is no shame in not being able to show up, but if somebody has a couple hours, it would be great to show solidarity because these strike captains who are honoring today have been out here every single day. Fisher and Long both declined to comment on Clooney's proposal. But others saw the fact that the A-listers' failed attempts to help restart negotiations with the studio highlights a deeper problem with the vision of the Guild's negotiating committee. And here we are, just others. I think it's pretty tough for SAG-AFTRA to not acknowledge that the A-listers witnessed their thinking and their strategy and didn't come away from it thinking, okay, they've got this, they've got a plan, says one source familiar with the Wednesday call. So, as far as we can tell, SAG-AFTRA's like, no, this was a regular conversation. They gave us some ideas. These things happen all the time. But because they're the A-listers, we're like, everyone's jumping in on it. And then here we go. George Clooney and other A-listers residuals and dues proposals, a gesture of goodwill, SAG-AFTRA exec says. Now, okay, so like I said earlier, these are the 4 articles I've gotten. Just take a look at the headlines. Restless A-list actors pressure SAG-AFTRA. Proposal to SAG-AFTRA didn't go well, maybe DOA. Versus biggest stars offer to kick in money to help. And, it was a gesture of goodwill. So it looks like Deadline's playing good cop and Variety's playing bad cop. On the picket lines at Warner Brothers on Thursday, Crabtree Ireland took a big picture appraisal of the A-listers' offer. The idea of lifting our dues caps and providing more membership dues could help fund all kinds of programs that can help members, like programs to help uninsured members who need health insurance, premium help, or things like that, the SAG-AFTRA leader noted. SAG-AFTRA, come on, Deadline. I know your name is Deadline, but that just because you're on a deadline doesn't mean you can't run basic spell check. SAG-AFTRA should be just in your spell check automatically. But that's not a way to put money into the benefit plans. It's not even legal to put money into the benefit plans except from employer contributions. So I really see that as a gesture of goodwill and support that's meant to help lift up the membership more than it is to affect the contract negotiations, he declared. While dues has not been a major topic in the SAG-AFTRA deliberations this year, the A-listers' idea of flipping the residual payout had the possibility to carry real heft, symbolically if nothing else. In real terms, by putting themselves at the bottom of the list and putting working actors at the top, the Clooney-led proposal could boost the vast majority of the 160,000 guild members, many of whom don't even earn enough to qualify for healthcare benefits. Netflix's Ted Sarandos repeatedly accusing SAG-AFTRA wanting to throw a subscriber levy into the deal. The guild's revenue-sharing proposal has been a top sticking point in reaching a new 3-year contract. From the very beginning of talks earlier this year, the Actors Guild has been seeking new financial compensation for the cast of successful streaming shows and movies, which has always been a non-starter with the AMPTP. Okay, so Ted Sarandos. Let's talk about Netflix, shall we? Transgirl Jade says who owns Deadline? Deadline is owned by the same parent companies, Variety and THR. But yeah, let's talk about Netflix. Because this subscriber levy, the proposal that SAG-AFTRA has made that the AMPTP is citing is the reason they walked away from the table. That would, I think it ends up being about 57 cents per subscriber per year that would go into paying residuals to every actor that's in any project that is viewed on a streaming service. And the AMPTP is like, well, that's unreasonable. We can't afford that. That's never going to happen. But Netflix, after reducing spend during strikes, now expects free cash flow to be $6.5 billion. I'm not going to read this whole article because a lot of this is just repeating the same stuff we've seen over and over again. But in its latest earnings disclosure, the streaming giant cited about $1 billion in lower than planned cash content spend amid the Dual Writers Guild of America and SAG-AFTRA strikes. And Netflix said it is upping its free cash flow estimates to $6.5 billion plus for the full year. At the same time, the streaming platform noted a new $10 billion share buyback program for its common stock. They're doing $10 billion in stock buybacks, but they can't afford a per subscriber levy. The free cash flow update, a metric Wall Street uses to evaluate funds left over once financial obligations are met, is a glimpse at how major media companies steered through the work stoppages. So, okay, free cash flow, that's after they have met all of their financial obligations, after all of their contracts have been paid, all of their employees have been paid, all the benefits. This is basically just cash in hand. $6.5 billion plus a $10 billion share buyback program. And you can't afford to pay the actors a deal that I think, I don't know the official estimate. I know the AMPTP is estimating it's costing more, and the SAG-AFTRA is estimating it'll cost less. But I think I saw it was about $500 million a year is what this would cost. You've got $6.5 billion cash in hand. You can easily afford that, especially because actors are the ones who most visibly are creating your content. Certainly, there's a lot of people involved in Hollywood, a lot of behind-the-scenes talent, but actors are the in front of camera talents. They are the ones that, without them, people are just going to watch nature documentaries. So they're important. And if there's any grain of truth to what Variety is saying about the A-listers being restless and going, oh, you know what, maybe we can, maybe if we pay more ourselves, we can fix things. Hollywood is not your friend. The AMPTP is not your friend, even if you are an A-lister. Hollywood is a brutal industry that would pay you nothing if they could. If you think because you're an A-lister that actually gives you mega clout to wave around in this negotiation, think again, because this is the way that Hollywood treats A-listers. Matthew Vaughn quit X-Men The Last Stand after discovering plan to trick Halle Berry with a fake Storm script that would be trashed after she signed on to return. I'm not going to read the whole story, but Matthew Vaughn, he was at New York City Comic-Con, and he had this tidbit. One of the main reasons I quit X-Men 3, and this is a true story, I went to an executive's office and I saw an X3 script. It was a lot fatter. I asked, what is this draft? They were like, don't worry about it. So I grabbed it and opened the first page, and it said, Africa, kids dying from no water, and Storm creates a thunderstorm to save all these children. I thought it was a pretty cool idea. I said, what is this? They said, this is the Halle Berry script because she hasn't signed on yet. This is what she wants it to be. And once she signs on, we'll throw it in the bin. I thought, if you're going to do that to an Oscar-winning actress who plays Storm, I quit. This was like at the height of Halle Berry's career. Coming off an Oscar win, she's been in 2 X-Men movies, okay? She is like, they're doing this because they want her, because they know that she puts butts in seats. And because Storm is a popular character. Now, I do think Storm was kind of underutilized in the X-Men movies, but if that's how they treat an A-lister, by lying them into a contract, like the AMPTP is not your friend, and trying to shore up things by saying, well, we'll pay more of the stuff. No, the AMPTP should be paying that stuff. They're the ones who are collecting all the ticket sales. They're the ones who are making all the brand deals. They are the ones who own everything in Hollywood, so they can pay you. But while this whole thing is going on with the current strike, there is an update on the potentially other strike. SAG-AFTRA, if you remember from a couple weeks back, they voted a strike authorization against the video game industry. And that doesn't mean they're striking against them yet, but they have been in contract negotiations with them for like a year, and they're not seeing movement on that front quite yet. So the strike authorization should be, a good indication of where they are at with regards to the video game industry. Now, they had talks with the video game industry at the end of September that went for 3 days, but they walked away without a deal, and they then immediately went into negotiations with the AMPTP. And so now it looks like SAG-AFTRA to set more talks with video game companies in hopes of averting second strike. The SAG-AFTRA announced Monday that it will schedule more bargaining sessions on a new video game contract in hopes of averting a second strike. The talks broke off last month without an agreement, but both sides indicated at the time that they would continue to negotiate. Yeah, I assume that part of the reason that the talks were not resuming is because at that time the AMPTP was like, we are willing to come back to the table, and it makes more sense to try and resolve the contract dispute during an active strike than one where you're only threatening to strike. SAG-AFTRA members remain on strike against the major film and TV companies. No talks are currently scheduled in that strike. Last month, the membership voted overwhelmingly to authorize a separate strike against 10 major video game companies, including Electronic Arts and Activision Productions, if talks do not result in a deal. The union's interactive media agreement was originally set to expire on November 7th of 2022, but it was extended by a year to allow further negotiations, which means we've got only a couple weeks before this contract expires. The Actors Union is pursuing a similar agenda across both the video game and TV and theatrical contracts, with emphasis on protecting members from artificial intelligence and securing an 11% raise to account for inflation. The talks with the video game companies began in October of 2022. There have been 6 rounds of bargaining, including 3 days from September 26th to September 28th. It's time for the video game companies to stop playing games and get serious about reaching an agreement on this contract, SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher said in a statement last month, adding that the time is now for these companies, which are making billions of dollars and paying their CEOs lavishly, to give our performers an agreement that keeps performing in video games as a viable career. Audrey Cooling, a spokeswoman for the video game employers, said last month that the two sides have reached a tentative agreement on over half of the issues on the table. In a statement on Monday, the union said negotiations would continue with new dates to be released as soon as they are determined. The agreement remains in effect for the time being. The union last went on strike against the video game companies in 2016. The walkout lasted 11 months. So they are going to be resuming talks, but we don't really have much more information on that other than, let me check the calendar. Okay, so the contract expires on November 7th, so that's 2.5 weeks away, which means if they don't have something resolved by that time, we may in fact be looking at second strike. But hopefully they're able to get something secured here, because yeah, it's always better when the studios give you what you're asking for so that you don't have to strike, right? That's the ideal. That's what everyone wants. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm trying to get my channel monetized, so your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream every Monday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons, with a very special shout out to my Whale Shark tier patron Ryan D and my Anemone Friend tier patron Piftle Cakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.